Good morning. I've just got back from gym and it was such an awesome drive to gym because there were two kangaroos in my way and I just had to stop and look at them and think, wow, I live somewhere where I have kangaroos in my yard, in my paddocks on the road. To the point we've got to be really, really careful when we drive because it is difficult to avoid them. It is so wonderful living here. I wanted to talk to you today about catastrophizing. That word's quite hard to say, isn't it? Catastrophizing. The ability to catastrophize an issue. What's that fable about the sky is falling, and the little chicken runs around going, the sky is falling, and the chicken has been hit with a little nut, and so decides the world is ending. Don't you feel like that sometimes? I know I do. I tend to ruminate or think about things and what if this happened, and what if this happened, and what if this happened. My mother and father used to nickname me as a child the what if girl because I'd say, well, what if this happens? And then what if this happens? And then what if this happens? And then, oh my goodness, what if this happens? And then, what if this happens? And I'd took a small issue and I would turn it into a ginormous catastrophe. This is a disaster. What do we do with that? Well, let's have a look at what catastrophizing is. It refers to something that causes great damage, suffering, or disaster in a psychological context. In life, we can take a simple issue and for a number of reasons snowball it, snowball going downhill, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Our way of staying safe, our way of staying alive includes looking at consequences. If this happened, what if this happened? So it's an instinctive strategy that we engage in to try and keep alive. We also catastrophize in order to avoid dealing with feelings. So by catastrophizing and getting all wound up about what could happen and this happened and this happened and this happened, we can avoid sitting in the actual grief. I have a friend, a very good friend, and what I'm talking about today doesn't refer to her story, but I'm going to use pieces of her story. She lives in what's called in Australia a body corporate, so it's 4 houses with a shared driveway, and she's having some issues with the neighbour over the shared land, and she's getting very upset about it. Now, if that happened to me, I would be very upset. It would really bother me because I'm a diehard introvert, and my solace and my space and knowing what sounds and distractions are in my space is very important to who I am. But I was listening to her and she talked about the problems with the shared space, and then she talked about a building going up behind her, which also was a legitimate issue. Then she talked about being lonely, and she talked about a number of other issues. And again, in case you're listening, this is not about your story. I just thought I'd use it. What I thought when I reflected upon it, it was really most probably about her being an older single person. And as an older single person in this Western society, we don't have the same level of support, communal support, that we used to when I was younger. When I was younger, all the Italian immigrants would move together in one street and they'd have gates open at the back and they'd all get together with their Sunday pastor and they'd all help each other. And I grew up with quite a few Italian families because my father immigrated as a refugee with quite a few Italian refugees. So I grew up with them, and I love the let's all live in the same street and let's all share a holiday house type of community. And being a member of the Polish community in Australia, it was much the same. All the Poles would look after other Poles. And I postulate that what is happening now is there is a separation. People are living by themselves in high-rise buildings, for example, and others are ignoring them. They're not saying, how are you? What can I do to help you? We're referring to the internet for a sense of community. And yes, I think the internet can be a sense of valid community. But isn't it a little bit sad that we've got to this point? So coming back to catastrophizing, I postulate that my friend may be dealing with the very real issue of being an older woman who is single without a lot of support in society. And it's almost that issue where we're legitimately worried about something in our home life, and then there is an issue of road rage, and we think it's all about the road rage. We triangulate and say it's all about that person who tooted at me, but it's not really. It's about this issue that is so painful, we don't want to look at it. Now, I'm not saying you have to look at the painful issue. I'm saying that perhaps we should consider what's really going on here. Catastrophizing can sometimes be our desire, our unconscious or subconscious desire to avoid what's really going on, the real suffering. The answer here is not necessarily to explore the suffering, only you know that. As I've said before, there's valid research to suggest that sometimes it's best to leave the issue of suffering. Only you know the answer there. So let's look at strategies to, I could say stop catastrophizing, but it would probably be better to say reduce catastrophizing. I'm looking at my kitchen here on the topic of catastrophizing, and I left home early and there's dishes everywhere. I've got shopping I haven't put away, I've got bags, I've got everything out. Goodness me, I better clean that up afterwards. I do apologise. The first point is challenge negative thoughts. When you find yourself thinking catastrophically, question the validity of these thoughts. Ask yourself, is there evidence to support them, and consider an alternative, more balanced viewpoint. I'm pulling away from using the word positive or negative. One of the reasons being is it polarizes our viewpoints. Oh, that's positive. That's negative. That goes in the positive pile over there. This goes in the negative pile over there. Is life really like that? I mean, seriously. Life is complex. There is a myriad of ways we can look at any one thing. If we put it in the basket, this is the negative basket, it's just too easy. Life isn't like that. People have strengths and weaknesses. People make wise decisions and not so wise, poor decisions. This is life. In order for us to grow in wisdom and have perspective, it's important that we look at the complexity of life. When we polarize, it is often a strategy to avoid dealing with something. Polarizing, all good, all bad. So let's challenge thought. Let's look at our thoughts and say, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence for this thought? Explore the thought. Could I have another thought instead of that thought? And try to have a level of balance in our thinking, but also the ability to say sometimes, gee whiz, Lauren, you are thinking catastrophically. I get it. I get what led to this, but let's just own it right now. You're a little bit of a catastrophic, fetally rocking frog on the floor. So let's be a frog on the floor for a little longer and then get back up. Like own it, cop it on the chin, as we say in Australia. Practice mindfulness. Don't you love it when you're anxious and catastrophizing and someone says, just calm down? Don't you want to like, that aside, let's be mindful. Mindfulness can look like different things in different moments. If I'm feeling particularly anxious, the last thing I want to do in my life is be mindful, for goodness sake. And if somebody tells me to be mindful, even the ability to say, okay, you're getting yourself all enmeshed in this issue, you're getting yourself all tangled up and you're going to fall over, Lauren. I'm going to be patient with you and tolerant because I get why it happened. But if you continue this way, Lauren, it's not going to work out. You know I'm a big one for talking to myself. Engage in mindfulness techniques to stay present. Techniques such as meditation, deep breathing, or yoga. Deep breathing is another one of those strategies when you're going and someone says, come on, breathe deeply. You want to go and bite their head off. But you can say, all right, I'm not really breathing deeply at the moment. My pattern of breathing is agitated and too fast. Oh, beautiful bird. However, I'm going to take a moment and just notice my breathing. I'm not going to ask my breathing to change. I'm just going to notice my breathing. I'm going to notice my neck. I'm going to relax it just a little bit. I'm not going to place expectations on myself. I'm going to relax a little bit. I'm going to set my timer for 2 minutes and just give myself a 1%, a little bit of change. Be tolerant with yourself through this stage. Yoga, I might do 2 minutes of yoga. I might do a hip stretch. And I will try to focus on the moment rather than worrying about potential future disasters. But I'll do so realistically because we consider potential disasters because of, or often because of, the way we internalize past experiences. And perhaps you've had a lot of really unfortunate past experiences. So it is innately instinctive for you to go, well, if this happened in the past, this could happen in the future. Statistically, yes. But also statistically, you have one life and there is always something juicy in the next moment, even if it is only a hot shower or your favorite mug. Now, a hot shower or your favorite mug is not going to be the miracle we all desire, but it's a 1%er, a gentle walk, a pat of a furry friend. These are 1%ers. Life can be really, really tough. Terrible things happen to good people. If we can find a ray of sunshine in the adversity and suffering of life, we are taking a step forward. So let's be realistic. Set goals within reason if you're up to it. There are times to stay in froggy position on the floor, rocking in a fetal position. Break down tasks or challenges into manageable steps. Keep lists, write it down, keep a journal. Do what suits you. This can help reduce feelings of being overwhelmed and reduce the daunting in a situation. Don't you love that word daunting? It so kind of encapsulates the feeling of feeling daunted. Oh my giddy aunt, is this really happening? So the 1%ers can move us away from that daunting, overwhelming feeling. Limit exposure to triggers, identify situations, call them out, name them. I like to use language. I like to say, this is a pretty, I won't swear, awful situation. I feel really bummed out about this. This was really not good. However, I may not feel like coping now, but within the next few minutes, the next few hours, I will feel like coping. I know that because I coped before and I will cope again. Call it out. State what is occurring. Don't whitewash it. Don't make it look pretty. Sit in the reality of the awfulness and say, I'm going to cope. I may not feel like it, but I'm going to cope. I will manage. I can be resilient. Call it out and then decide how to deal with it and be tolerant of yourself. Focus on solutions. Instead of ruminating on what could go wrong, shift your focus to address the situation. Look at what you can do. Remember, there's 3 choices with triggers. It's accept, withdraw, or change. Focus on what you can do. Quite a lot of the time, we are powerless to act in certain situations. Then we say, okay, I would like a solution here. However, there is no solution. My partner's left me or somebody has passed on, and this is just awful. But I'm going to take one step at a time. Focus on what you can do when it is possible to can do. Talk it out. You may want to talk to a friend and ask for comfort, ask for reassurance, do nice comfy things, all those things that help you feel cozy and warm blanket-ish. That's a new phrase, warm blanket-ish. Share thoughts with someone trusted. Be careful who this person is. Be very careful. Call it out. This is terrible. I'm okay. Remember the Stoic quote, Marcus Aurelius, which I can't remember, that every day has at least 3 adversities. When the first one occurs, say, yippee, the first one's down, 2 more to go. When you catastrophize, start by noticing it. Be the observer, be the eagle looking down upon the fields, be the witness. Try and be the third person and notice any strong feelings of attachment. Of course, we're always going to attach because we're social, but notice the attachment. Is this attachment, has it gone too far? Is this attachment serving me? How would it be if I let go of this attachment? I know it's hard to let go of attachment. Play with the scenario. Look at the scenario from a number of different ways. Brainstorm it. Think of some silly ways to deal with it, some unreasonable ways, some irrational ways, so you're playing with it. Give the characters in this scenario cartoon names, perhaps The Simpsons, perhaps a fairy tale, and play with the characters to demonize them. Try and bring humor into it. Try and practice that scripting. Look at the words you use. Try and play with other words. So instead of when something's really awful, say, gee whiz, that's disappointing. Now, perhaps it is awful, but you can also play with your thoughts by saying, gee, that irritated me. Goodness, I'm frustrated by that. Oh, that's incredibly disappointing. To try and play with your mindset. The next strategy that's really important is give yourself pause. Take a moment to walk. Take a moment to have a shower. Take a moment to have a cup of tea. Take a moment to pause so that you respond rather than react. That one is so difficult for me, so I hear you if you find that difficult. Just because you think something is true doesn't mean it is true. Just because you feel something doesn't mean that you have to feel it or believe it. Just because you have a thought doesn't mean you have to continue that thought. Take a breath and play with this issue. Explore the issue, challenge it. Okay, I think I'll leave it there. Today's the last day of the discounted counselling. Spring counselling, spring Australia time. You can find me on Simply Book Me and my name, which will be changing when I get married, and that's very exciting. I'll share that with you sometime. You've asked me a little bit more about my story there. I would love to share it. Let's look down upon our catastrophizing. Remember, no one knows your issue like you, so you have a right to feel this way, and you have a right to change the way you think. You have the ability to practice different ways of processing, thinking, feeling. Practice is exactly that. It's a practice. It's a skill. It takes time. Cognitive Behavioural Therapy may say it's a choice, and it is a choice, but choices are learned. Choices are socialised. Give yourself a moment of peace to say, this is not good. I don't feel this is good at all. I don't like this at all, but I know I'll be okay.